On the last night at Camp Wildfire, Jake Morrison did something no one expected. He gathered the squad leaders, got hold of the Vietnam list, and revealed his secret plan to save his friends from war. He had 24 hours to convince everyone to stay safe. Because when morning came, either they would all be free or they would all be in military prison. Hello, I'm speaking to you from Real L, Faye Stories channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is an extraordinary story that took place in 1971 at a military training camp in Louisiana. This isn't just a soldier's rebellion. It's also a story of friendship, courage, and standing against the system. Write in the comments which city you're watching from. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button. 1971, Louisiana. Camp Wildfire, officially called Advanced Infantry Training Center, but known among soldiers as Gateway to Hell. This was the last stop before going to Vietnam. After 8 weeks of merciless training, survivors were sent directly to Saigon. Jake Morrison, 20 years old, from Minneapolis, was a young man who never wanted to be a soldier. He was studying philosophy at university, participating in anti-war protests. But when his draft number came up, instead of fleeing, he came. Change the system from within, he would say. Company A, 2nd Platoon, was a group of 40 people. Most were 18 to 19 years old, farmers' children, workers' children. Some were university students like Jake, but they all had one thing in common. In 8 weeks, they would go to Vietnam. Jake was different from the first day. While others followed orders without question, he constantly asked questions. Why are we doing this? Does this make sense? Isn't there another way? The sergeants didn't like him, but his friends admired him. Tommy Wilson, 18, from Nebraska, the only son of a farming family. He had a girlfriend waiting at home, Linda. He planned to marry her, but first he had to return from Vietnam. At night, he would look at Linda's photo in bed and cry. Danny Price, 19, from Detroit. His father worked in an automobile factory. Danny would rather work in a factory than go to Vietnam, but he had no choice. His mother wrote every week, saying, "Son, be careful, we love you so much." Sam Carter, 20, from Texas. He looked like a cowboy, but was actually a bookworm. He wanted to be a literature teacher. He hoped he could teach in Vietnam, but knew he had to go to real war. Michael Chen, 19, from San Francisco, Chinese American. He would be the first college graduate in his family, but military service had disrupted his university plans. He didn't want to go to Vietnam because he knew that being Asian would make him more of a target there. All these young men were experiencing the same fear, going to Vietnam and dying, but they couldn't say it. They were under the pressure of being men, appearing strong. Sergeant William Steele, 35, was a Korean War veteran, tough, ruthless, but also experienced. His job was to train these young men so they could survive in Vietnam, and he used every method necessary for this. "Listen to me, you little city boys," he would shout every morning. "In 8 weeks you're going to Vietnam. Charlie won't show you mercy there. I won't show you mercy either." Steele never liked Jake. Jake constantly asked questions, argued with orders, influenced other soldiers too. "Morrison," he would shout, "did you come here to fight, or do you think this is a university debate club?" "Sergeant, I'm just trying to understand why we're doing this," Jake would say in a calm voice. "You're not here to understand, you're here to do." Steele's answer was always the same. But Jake didn't give up. In the evenings, he talked with his friends in the barracks. He showed them different perspectives. "This war is wrong," he would say. "What are we looking for there? Why can't the Vietnamese decide for themselves how to live in their own country?" The first 4 weeks were tough. Wake up at 5 a.m., running, gymnastics, weapons training, field training, night training. Jake wasn't physically strong, but he was mentally resilient. He overcame every difficulty. His friends began to respect him. Jake never complained, never gave up, and most importantly, he gave them hope. One night, Tommy asked Jake, "Jake, do you really not want to go to Vietnam?" "No, Tommy, and neither do you. None of us do, but they're forcing us to go. So what can we do?" Jake didn't know yet then, but he was starting to think about something. Danny's mother had written in her letter, "Son, if you really don't want to go, there are other ways. They discharge many soldiers for psychological problems." Jake noted this information in a corner of his mind. In the 5th week, everything changed. Sergeant Steele told him the real situation in Vietnam. Last month, 500 American soldiers died in Vietnam. This month, more will die. Some of you will die too. This is reality. But if you're well trained here, your chances of survival increase. After this talk, the barracks was always quiet. Everyone was in their own corner, dealing with their own fears. Jake couldn't sleep that night. He walked around, thought, then he decided he had to save his friends. The next evening, Jake secretly gathered some friends. Tommy, Danny, Sam Michael, and a few more people. "Listen," Jake said, "I'm thinking of a plan, but you have to want it too." "What plan?" Tommy asked. "A plan not to go to Vietnam." "Jake, this is crazy," Sam said. "We'll be considered deserters." "Not deserting," Jake said. "There are legal ways. Psychological unfitness, medical exemption, conscientious objection. But we need to do it together." Jake had done a lot of research before coming to training camp. There were legal ways to avoid going to Vietnam. 1. Psychological unfitness. If a soldier had psychological problems, he could be deemed unfit for military service. 2. Medical exemption. Physical problems could also be cause for discharge. 3. Conscientious objection. Could refuse to fight due to religious beliefs. 4. Educational deferment. Students studying in critical areas could be deferred. Jake explained these options to his friends. But most importantly, they had to do it together, because if they applied individually, they would fail. But if they did as a group, military command would be forced. "But Jake," Michael said, "if this plan doesn't work, we'll all be in prison." "Michael," Jake said, "is that worse than going to Vietnam and dying?" This question silenced everyone. In the 6th week, Jake began expanding his plan. He was trying to convince not just close friends, but other soldiers in company too. But this wasn't easy. Some were scared, some were conflicted with patriotic feelings, and some actually wanted to fight. Jerry Brooks, 21, from Alabama. There was a rumor that his father had also died as a martyr in Vietnam. "Jake," he said, "I'm going to avenge my father." "Jerry," Jake said, "even if you avenge your father, he won't come back. But if you die, your mother will have lost both her husband and her son." This conversation made Jerry think. Steve Martinez, 19, from California. His family was of Mexican origin, had immigrated to America in the last generation. "I think I owe this country," he would say. "Steve," Jake said, "you owe this country, but not a death debt. By living, by being a good citizen here, you'll contribute much more." Jake was trying to convince each one individually, but time was running out. In the 7th week, training intensified even more. Sergeant Steele was teaching them Vietnam tactics. Charlie attacks at night, approaches without making a sound. Your survival depends on your reflexes. Night training began. Forest simulations, ambush training, survival training. Jake could see how scared his friends were in every training. Tommy started having nightmares. "Jake," he would say, "I always dream of dying." Danny's hand started shaking. He couldn't calm down when holding a weapon. Michael constantly thought about home, miss his family. "I feel like I'll never see my family again," he would say. When Jake saw the situation, he decided to accelerate his plan. At the end of the 7th week, Jake organized a secret meeting. When the barracks was empty, during guard change, he gathered 15 people. "Friends," Jake said, "each of you doesn't want to go to Vietnam. I don't want to either. And there are legal ways not to go." He explained the plan in detail. "Tomorrow morning, we'll all go to command together. We'll all simultaneously state for different reasons that we can't go to Vietnam. I'll apply for conscientious objection, Tommy for psychological unfitness, Danny for medical exemption, Michael for educational deferment." "But Jake," Sam said, "if we do this, they'll court-martial us." "Sam, here's what's important. If we all do this together, the press will learn about the situation, and the Army doesn't want to look bad. Instead of punishing us, they'll quietly discharge us. The last night, the barracks was in a tense atmosphere. Everyone had to make their own decision. Jake made one final speech. Friends, I'm not forcing anyone. This is your decision. But know this, if we implement this plan tomorrow morning, either we'll all be free or we'll all be punished together. But at least we'll be together. Tommy decided first. I'm in, Jake. I want to see Linda again. Danny, I'm in too. My mother is waiting for me. Michael, I miss my family. I'm joining too. Sam, I want to be a teacher. Not in war, but in the classroom. One by one, they decided. Of the 15 people, 12 decided to join Jake's plan. 3 chose to go to Vietnam. Jerry Brooks was among them. Guys, I wanted to avenge my father. But Jake is right. If I die, my mother will have lost both her husband and her son. Steve Martinez. I owe America, but I'll pay it by living. Morning, 6 a.m. Normally breakfast time. But Jake and his friends walked straight to the command building. When Sergeant Steele saw them, he was surprised. Morrison, where are you going? Sergeant, we need to see the commander. About what? About Vietnam assignment. Steele's face darkened. This wasn't a good thing. When they reached the command building, Major Thompson met them. What do you want, soldiers? Jake stepped forward. Major, we want to submit our official applications regarding our Vietnam assignment. What applications? Conscientious objection, psychological unfitness, medical exemption, and educational deferment applications. Major Thompson's face changed. Were 12 people simultaneously requesting the same thing? Is this a joke, Morrison? Major Thompson shouted. No, Major. We're all submitting serious applications. Here are the documents. Jake placed 12 different application forms he had prepared beforehand on the table. Each had different justifications, but all wanted the same result. Not to be sent to Vietnam. You formed a conspiracy. Thompson said, this is military rebellion. Major, Jake said in a calm voice, we're exercising our legal rights. According to military law, every soldier has the right to conscientious objection. Psychological unfitness and medical exemption are also legal procedures. Thompson remained silent for 2 minutes. Then he called Sergeant Steele. Steele, how did these men's training go? Major, they all completed training successfully. But Morrison was always rebellious. Rebellious? How rebellious? Constantly asking questions, arguing with orders. Jake intervened. Major, asking questions is not rebellion. Military regulations provide for soldiers to receive orders with understanding. When Thompson understood the seriousness of the situation, he called higher authorities. But things began developing as Jake had foreseen. That afternoon, a reporter from the local newspaper came to the camp. Someone had leaked the situation to the press. Major Thompson, how do you interpret 12 soldiers simultaneously not want to go to Vietnam? Thompson was caught unprepared. This is a routine situation. Some soldiers always request exemptions for various reasons. But 12 people at the same time and in an organized manner? Is this a protest against the Vietnam War? Thompson said no comment and ended the meeting. But the news appeared on television that evening. The headline was, 12 soldiers in Louisiana refused to go to Vietnam. The next day, Jake and his friends were interrogated separately. Military police spoke with them. Their backgrounds were investigated. Families were contacted. Jake's interrogation lasted the longest. Morrison, you planned this conspiracy, didn't you? Colonel, this isn't a conspiracy. This is friendship. My friends were scared. I showed them there were legal options. You influenced them to give up going to Vietnam. No, Colonel. They already didn't want to go. I just showed them how they might not have to go. The interrogations lasted 3 days. During this time, the news also reached the national press. Anti-Vietnam War groups began supporting Jake and his friends. Jake's family came from Minneapolis. His mother, Sarah Morrison, appeared on television. My son is a patriotic child, but he believes this war is wrong. And so do I. Why should we have to send our children to such a war? Tommy's girlfriend Linda came from Nebraska. Tommy is a good person. He can change the world through love, not fighting. Danny's mother from Detroit. My son is ready to do military service, but not to die in Vietnam. As media support increased, the Army was in a difficult position. If they punished these children, public reaction would increase even more. A week later, Jake and his friends were called to command again. This time there was a colonel with Major Thompson. Soldiers, the colonel said, your situation has been evaluated. I'll offer you a deal. What is it, Colonel? Jake asked. Honorable discharge. You won't go to Vietnam, but your military life will end here too. What about after? Will there be problems in our civilian lives? No, your documents will only say duty completed. Jake looked at his friends. There was happiness in everyone's eyes. We accept, Colonel. The last 3 days were spent at Camp Wildfire. Jake and his friends said goodbye to other soldiers. Some envied them, others admired them. Sergeant Steele approached Jake. Morrison, I never liked you, but I admit you're brave. Sergeant, you were doing your job too. I understand. Morrison, some advice? Be brave in civilian life too, but be a little more cautious. Jake smiled. Thank you, Sergeant. On the last night, the 12 friends sat together. They talked about their future plans. Tommy, I'll marry Linda. We'll buy a farm. Danny, I'll work at my father's factory. Maybe I'll start my own business. Michael, I'll finish university. I'll be an engineer. Sam, I'll be a teacher. I'll teach children about peace. Jake, I'll finish university too. I'll study law. Maybe I'll become an anti-war lawyer. The next morning, the 12 friends left camp separately. Each was picked up by their families. Jake was picked up by his mother and father. Son, his mother said, I'm proud of you. Mom, I just did what was right. That's why I'm proud. Tommy was picked up by Linda. They hugged each other and cried. They were tears of joy. Danny was met by his family. His mother never wanted to let him go. As everyone returned to their homes, Jake looked back. Camp Wildfire was getting smaller and smaller. This dark period was ending. In 1975, the Vietnam War ended. It became clear how right Jake's decision had been. Tommy married Linda. They bought a small farm in Nebraska, had 3 children. They lived a happy life. Danny worked at his father's factory, then started his own business. He opened a small auto repair shop. He made good money, got married, had 2 children. Michael studied engineering at the University of California. Then he worked in Silicon Valley, founded a technology company. He became a successful businessman. Sam became a teacher. For 30 years, he taught his students peace and love. When he retired, hundreds of students thanked him. Jake studied law. He became a lawyer helping Vietnam War veterans. He fought for their rights. Later, he founded a human rights organization. In 1995, on the 20th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, the 12 friends met again at Jake's house in Minneapolis. They were all middle-aged now. Most were married with children. They had successful careers. Jake, Tommy said, you saved us. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be here now. Tommy, Jake said, I just offered you options. The decision was yours. But the courage was yours, Danny said. Without you, none of us could have shown this courage. Michael added, Jake, you taught us the most valuable thing, to be brave, to do what's right. Sam, I always tell my students about you, how a friend could act courageously. That night, the 12 friends remembered the old days, but they looked not to the past, but to the future. Today, Jake Morrison is 73 years old. He still lives in Minneapolis. He has grandchildren, a happy life. Sometimes he gives lectures to young lawyers. He tells them about courage, the legal system, and individual rights. Young people, he says, sometimes what's right may not be popular, but right is right. If you think something is wrong, don't stay silent. Speak up. Jake's story isn't just a soldier's rebellion story. This is a story of friendship, courage, and doing what's right. Those 12 young men didn't just save their own lives in 1971. They also gave a message to future generations. What matters is not blindly obeying the system, but acting according to your conscience. And even today, the words Jake spoke on that last night at Camp Wildfire remain valid. Being brave to do what's right may sometimes be easier than doing it alone. But if we do it together, the impossible becomes possible.